بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا Muhammad. أما بعد. Chapter number 18. The author Shaykh Muhammad Fuad Abdul Baqi rahimahullah says, باب النهي عن الاستنجاء من اليمين. The prohibition of cleansing oneself after relieving oneself with the right hand. The prohibition of wiping yourself, washing yourself, cleaning yourself, i.e. your private parts, when using the bathroom with the right hand. The prohibition of doing this for men and for women, for old and for young, with regards to urinating, with regards to defecating. The prohibition of doing this with regards to touching a urine or stool directly or indirectly with a napkin, with a bottle, with a wipe. And regardless whether this prohibition is something that's haram ala sabil al-tahrim, or if it's disliked ala sabil al-tanzih, something that's unlawful or disliked. This is all included in the chapter heading. We try to mention every single class and all of our different books of hadith that we explain the crucial importance of focusing on the chapter heading. The crucial importance of having a thorough understanding and comprehension of the concept being presented in the actual bab. Hadith 151. The author says, Hadith Abi Qatada قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا شرب أحدكم فلا يتنفس في الإناء وإذا أتى الخلاء فلا يمس ذكره بيمينه ولا يتمسح بيمينه. Abu Qatada radiyallahu anhu said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whenever you drink, do not blow or breathe into the vessel. Whenever you drink, do not blow or breathe into the vessel. And when you relieve yourselves, when you go to the bathroom, it says, فَلَا يَمَسَّ ذَكَرَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ. You should not touch your penis with your right hand. وَلَا يَتَمَسَّحْ بِيَمِينِهِ. Nor should you wipe yourself, i.e. you're behind your buttocks, cleaning one's anus with your right hand. Once more, Abu Qatada radiyallahu anhu narrates, قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا شرب أحدكم فلا يتنفس في الإناء وإذا أتى الخلاء فلا يمس ذكره بيمينه ولا يتمسح بيمينه. When you drink, don't breathe into the vessel. When you go to the bathroom, do not touch your penis with your right hand, nor wipe your behind with your right hand. Obviously, the hadith is in the Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim, and the meanings of the hadith, inshallah ta'ala, are clear. The highlighting point and the connection between the chapter and the hadith is the second half of the hadith, the last two parts of the hadith, not the first. And that is with regards to taking one's right hand and touching their private areas and cleaning their private areas. Or it clearly says, فَلَا يَمَسَ ذَكَرَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ. Do not touch your penis with your right hand. وَلَا يَتَمَسَّحْ بِيَمِينِهِ. Nor wipe your behind your buttocks with your right hand. That is the mahallu shahid, or that's the highlighting point from the hadith. And it's also very important as well as hadith disciples for us to understand how to focus on the main point from the hadith and how to focus on extracting the ruling and extracting the fa'idah from the hadith, as we always say. So that is the main focus of the hadith and its study. Now, we have a few issues here with this hadith with regards to the highlighting point. The first one is, it says one should not touch his penis. But we mentioned that the chapter heading includes male or female, and not just a male. So one may say, is the ruling specific to males? The people of knowledge, they explain the hadith by saying, the general rule in Islam, Nawawi rahimahullah said that the qaida in Islam is that anything which is noble should be done with the right hand, and anything which is ignoble should be done with the left. So cleansing oneself is for men and for women, male and female. So touching your vagina and touching your penis is the same. Do not use the right hand, even though the hadith only said right hand. Someone may say that is restricted to just a male. And someone else may say, rather, هذا من باب التغليب. The Prophet was speaking to men and addressing men. In most cases, he was around men, and that's why he said this. Not that it's specific to men. Let alone other texts. There are other proofs from the Sunnah regarding the right hand and the left hand, as Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala expounded on, and perhaps we'll read his kalam if there is enough time. The second issue is with regards to if one cannot use the right hand to clean oneself, then how does one properly clean oneself? If you pour the water with the left hand, wipe with the left hand, what do you use? How can you assist yourself and help yourself out by just using one hand if you're not to do it with the right or hold it with the right? So the hadith or the part that says وَلَا يَتَمَسَّحْ, wiping yourself, could be for one's behind and for one's penis. So one may hypothetically say, if I cannot touch my penis with my right hand, nor can I wipe it with my right hand, how can I do all these things with just my left hand? Also, we have the different, or the prohibition that the ulama of Islam mentioned with regards to touching najasa directly, touching it directly. So if we want to pour or wipe, that's just one hand that I'm using. Okay? So that's a very interesting study of the hadith right there. Nawawi rahimahullah and others, they say that most of the ulama, 99% of them, they say that it's not haram, but it's disliked. They say it's disliked to touch one's private parts with the right hand when using the bathroom, and not necessarily haram. And they say that it's لأنه من باب الآداب. It's just an etiquette, it's a good manner, and it's not necessarily a ruling that's unlawful. And these ulama, they say that whenever there is a prohibition or a command concerning adab, then the thing is either recommended or disliked and not necessarily obligatory and haram. All of the ulama do not agree upon this qaida. There are certain aspects in which they do, but all of them don't agree with its absoluteness. And many of the ulama, they say that rather the prohibition and the command of the Prophet ﷺ is general, and ibadat and adab and akhlaq and fada'il, unless there is another hadith, ijma, something else that takes away from the asl, the commanding verb or the prohibition. Khairan, inshallah. We don't wish to discuss the usul right now in detail. What's important is that's what they say. Another issue is this just restricted to the time of using the bathroom? In other words, it's not haram or not disliked to touch one's penis with the right hand outside of using the bathroom, such as washing up, taking a shower, such as sexual intercourse and foreplay, such as a person being a physician or a doctor, and things like this. Tayyib. Let's go back to the first part of the hadith that talks about drinking. The hadith says that whenever you drink, do not make nafas. Don't breathe and blow into the vessel. The scholars of Islam, they explain this by saying that one should not blow back into the vessel. He should breathe outside of the vessel after he takes a drink. Breathe 3 times, take 3 breaths for several wisdoms and purposes. First and foremost, they say that this is healthier and it allows a person to enjoy his or her drink more. Better for one's digestion. They also say if you're drinking in a circle or sitting of people and you have to pass the bottle or pass the cup or pass the jug, pass the water skin in the time of the Prophet ﷺ to your neighbor, the one who's sitting next to you, if you breathe while the jug is up to your mouth, then you may put saliva into it, or snot or mucus, or something may fall from your nose, some debris, or something may come out of your mouth and make it nasty, make it disgusting, make it undesirable for your neighbor to drink after you. So they say that's the reason why. And they also say that it's disliked and not necessarily haram. And it's an adab min al-adab. Adab ma'ruf. Well-known, good thing to do. And some of the ulama, they say it doesn't necessarily mean that a person can't do it in a sitting or a gathering, let alone if one is by him and herself, if it's your own vessel. Especially if you know that the person who's next to you doesn't necessarily mind. Now, many people, they may say, we're not going into other hadiths, but just this hadith here, the hadith of Abi Qatada in front of us, that this proves that a person can't blow on a cup of hot coffee or hot tea, hot soup. You have to wait until it cools down. And you can't blow into it. You can't blow on it. Does that necessarily mean that here? Especially when we understand the wisdoms of the hadith. To blow on the vessel, to cool it down, does not necessarily mean a person is making it nasty and dirty, especially if it's just one person that's drinking or eating the soup, the broth. Let alone the fact, as we mentioned, what the ulama say, if the person doesn't mind. Last but not least, the last fa'idah of this hadith that we'll mention now is the beauty of the sunnah and the comprehensiveness of the sunnah, or as one hadith teaches us, etiquettes in two different contrast worlds. One is dealing with intake, and one is dealing with exiting, leaving the body. Consumption, putting something in your body, and another etiquette is dealing with when you remove something from your body. So this hadith is showing us the universal principle of Islam, is that Islam is thorough, all aspects of life, how you eat and how you use the bathroom, and that there is no liberalism or there is no secular nominal way of practicing Islam. Islam deals with what you drink and how you drink it, and Islam also deals with how you use the bathroom, the most intimate thing. Islam teaches you what and what not to do. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Chapter 19. The author rahimahullah says, Babul tayammuni fit tuhuri wa ghayrihi. Says, using the right hand, starting off with one's right side at the time of purification and other acts. At the time of purification and other things. At-tayammun, using the yameen. When you make wudu, when you make ghusl, and using the yameen when you put on your shoes, when you put on your clothes, touching, kissing the black stone, etc. Another etiquette with regards to using the bathroom and cleansing oneself. حديث عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعجبه التيمم في تنعله وترجله وطهوره وفي شأنه كله. Aisha narrates, Hadith 152, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was very fond of his right side, and he was very fond of beginning and starting off with the right. When he put on his shoes, when he combed his hair, and when he performed wudu. Rather, وَفِي شَأْنِهِ كُلِّهِ, everything that he did, i.e., of nobility. The hadith shows us, not necessarily something that's mandatory, but an etiquette of putting on one's shoes, an etiquette of combing one's hair, meaning the right side of the head, brushing your hair, and also an etiquette of making wudu to start with the right side, making ghusl with the right side. Rather, she said, وَفِي شَأْنِهِ كُلِّهِ, all of his affairs, everything that he did. We explained of nobility. So this hadith shows us the virtue of the right and the virtue of beginning and starting off with the right. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he comments on this hadith as well, mentioning the qa'idah of the deen, of the right side, as we mentioned briefly before in the Hadith Abi Qatada. And this Hadith shows us that the Prophet ﷺ was a human being. He wore shoes, sandals, he combed his hair, he washed up. He wasn't an angel. He was not made out of light. He was a man. Allah Azza wa Jalla, without a doubt, put light in him. He made him Siraj Munir. He made him a guide, a beacon of light. One who illuminates the path for the people, to show the people the guidance. There's no doubt about that. But the Prophet ﷺ was a human being, alayhi salatu wasalam. Nawawi says that this hadith shows us that anything which is min bab al-tashrif, as we said once before, of nobility, the right hand should be used. Many of the ulama, they branch off this hadith with regards to the siwak. What side should you brush your teeth with? Which hand should you use to make the siwak? Some of them say if it's cleaning the teeth with the left, if your teeth are already clean, then with the right. Khairan, inshallah. Chapter 21. After chapter 19, we have chapter 21. We explained that and shed light upon that already. باب الاستنجاء بالماء من التبرز. حديث أنس قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدخل الخلاء فأحمل أنا وغلام إداوة من ماء وعنزة يستنجي بالماء. حديث أنس بن مالك قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا تبرز لحاجته أتيته بماء فيغسل به. Hadith number 153 under chapter 21. Chapter 21 says, making al-istinja with water. Cleaning oneself with water. When you use the bathroom, use water. I.e., the permissibility of doing so. Not necessarily being mandatory, but permissible. And one may say, what's the purpose of studying it and debating it being permissible or not? It's well known. Muslims in America, Muslims in the UK, we use water. You say stinja. Or is the stinja bottle at? That's what you say in America. If you go over a brother's house and you use the bathroom and there's no stinja, no water pot, flower pot, no bottle, no spring water bottle, no medical bottle in there, you become worried and scared. Like, what is this? This is a well-known. Any Muslim home, any masjid that you go to is well-known. So why even bring this up? First and foremost is water is considered food. Water is a noble matter. It's something that Allah made and created and gave us. And He has informed us that He made every living thing from water. So if water is a food, and it's a noble, not just noble, but just a major essence, a major commodity people live off of, and they'll die without. How can it be used to clean yourself with urine and stool? How can you use water to wipe yourself? Isn't that a waste? That's destruction of this most precious and most valuable commodity. So we explained before in our studies, we as students of Hadith, students of this culture, knowing that something is a mas'ala, knowing that an issue is an actual issue, is a level of knowledge. Just to know that there is actual kalam on this issue and there's actual legal dispute, that in itself is a marhala. Then when we know the proofs and evidences, we know what the ulama say, we know the khilaf of the ulama, we can discern, differentiate, and we can make our own ijtihad, and we can summarize it and explain it and display it to the people. That's another level higher of knowledge, etc. So, al-ma' al-mat'um, water is something that people eat. People, they consume it, they digest it. So how can it be permissible to use? So one may say it's haram to use water. You must use rocks and stones, tissues and wipes, but you cannot use water. Because the same water that you can get from the kitchen sink, you can take the water to the bathroom. Or if you're traveling somewhere, okay, you have to stop on the side of the road, or a porta potty, as they say, a john, a latrine, or an airplane, wherever you are, you only have spring water, but you have to use the bathroom really bad. oh man, can I use it or no? Or even deeper than that, you may be somewhere and it may be an emergency, you only have Zamzam water. Can you use Zamzam water to make istinja? It's water that's noble, quote unquote, holy type of water, quote unquote, we said. So with that being said, how can it even be permissible? This hadith shows us that it's permissible to use water, even though other types of foods and things you're not to use to clean yourself. And it's not disliked and it's not haram. Let alone the fact what some of the ulama of the past used to say, some of the salaf, they would say that istinja, they would say it's only for women. It's feminine. Obviously, this hadith refutes that. And as we have explained many times before, the isolated statement of a tabi'i under any circumstances is it a dalil. The isolated statement of a tabi'i under any circumstances is it a dalil. And the ulama of Islam, they differ on the sahabi's statement, the isolated statement of a companion being a dalil, let alone of a tabi'i. And the more that you study and the more that you read and the deeper that you dig into the actual kutub, the books, the butun al-kutub, you'll find all types of gharaib and ajaib. All types of strange, weird, and peculiar things that many of the tabi'een would say and would do. Many of the sahaba, was Ibn Umar, places that he would go and how he would make wudu and all types of things. And you say, how is this even possible? Which proves the feebleness of the argument of those who say that I'm going to boycott you and I'm going to do this and do that because of what Hassan Basri said and what Ibn Umar did. Rather, outside of the dawah field, we have the different madhabs and the contradiction and the hypocrisy and the double, triple standard that we find in the different madhabs. And the different issues, they'll make something permissible, even though it's against the sunnah, against the hadith. They say, لِفِعْلِ Ibn Umar ذَلِكَ. Ibn Umar used to do this. But when it comes to other issues, they won't take what Ibn Umar used to do. That's contradictory, such as trimming the beard, the qabda, for example. But the zakat al-fitr, Ibn Umar used to do it a couple of days before. So what is the dalil? Ibn Umar's statement, absolutely or not? What is the way of understanding what Hassan al-Basri and Sa'id ibn Jubayr and this one and that one and these people, what they did? For example, mathalan, Sahaba and Tabi'een. The double standard of many madhabs, they'll take the views of the Tabi'een and the Sahaba and restricting certain things or explaining certain things or even doing certain acts, certain du'as, certain prayers, making the tarawih, 40 raka'at, 30 raka'at, 20 raka'at. They'll take them and they'll keep practicing it every single year. But the other statements, the other actions, they say no, the hujjah is the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam statement. So that's a problem in itself. What's important is that's what's meant by the chapter heading. Hadith 153 is narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu, and Hadith 154 is also narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu, which says that whenever the Messenger of Allah would enter the khala, when he would go to relieve himself, me, he says, ana wa ghulam, another young man like myself, we would carry a small water skin, a small little, bottle of water, and also a small spear. And the Prophet would yastanji bil ma. He would use the water to make istinja. In other words, to prove, not only did I just bring him the water, someone says, well, the Prophet never did it. The Prophet never knew about it. No, he did use it. That water is not haram to be used to clean oneself. And the second narration says, فَيَغْسِلُ بِهِ. He will wash himself with the water. The water will be gone. So this proves that it's not haram to use water for al-istinja and it's permissible. Now, in the issue of just using water, or the issue of just using dry matter and not dry and water together, that's another issue in itself. Can I just use tissue without istinja? You go over to brother's house and he doesn't have any water. I don't want to use water. I want to save and conserve water. I just want to use tissue. Is that fine? I want to use stones. Is that all right? Scholars of Islam, they say that we have three different levels. First level is just using the dry matter, whether it's a stone or tissue, ما يقوم مقام الحجر, or just using water, which is best and more complete, more thorough. And some, they say, using the dry and the wet together. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. The hadith also teaches us the importance of the sutra. As we explained in other lectures, that the Prophet ﷺ would carry this anaza, and some of the ulama would say that he would use it as a sutra after he made wudu. After he used the answered, he relieved himself, he would make wudu and he would pray towards the sutra when he was far away from the people. We explained that before. Another ulama, they say rather he would use that to ward off any insects or use it to cover himself, etc. Khair and inshallah. The hadith also shows us the service of an alim, to serve an alim, and it's a means of nobility to serve, for a young man to serve a leader of the Muslims. Tayyib, chapter number 22. Bab al-Mashi al-Khuffain. He says, wiping over the khuffain, wiping over the leather socks, i.e., the permissibility of wiping over the leather socks, i.e., the recommendation and the virtue of wiping over the leather socks, i.e., the permissibility and the recommendation of praying, offering salat in leather socks. That's what's meant by this chapter heading. And wiping over the leather socks, even though it just deals with the socks, is considered to be a major manifestation of the beauty of Islam, of the ease of Islam, the simplicity of Islam, the convenience of Islam, and how Islam looks after the people's rights and it looks after their needs. And Islam is a means of mercy and never a means of punishment. It's a means of mercy and never a means of punishment. Islam intends to help the people out and never to hurt the people. Men and women, they have to travel. They have to go places. It's cold, it's hot, sand, dust, insects, different problems that people have, having a sand cut, a foot infection, a wound, fighting an Allah's cause. So they need to cover their feet. It's cold, it's hot, they need to cover their feet. So therefore, it only makes sense for them to have the rukhsah, the permissibility of not washing the feet, but wiping them. Obviously, we explained the narrations about not wiping the actual bare feet. The hadith of Abi Hurairah and hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As in the previous chapter, the previously mentioned chapters. So therefore, when a person puts on a leather sock, which is a means of style, which is a means of fashion, which is a means of comfort, which is a means of outfitting oneself, you wipe over it to make things easy and simple. And the entire Sharia is based off of ease and simplicity and looking after the needs and also the wants of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whenever we study fiqh, we can never ever lose focus of the major wisdom behind studying these rulings. And that is ibadah. It's the whole purpose of studying and learning, and to realize how great and how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly is to us. Also, the thoroughness of the deen. Islam does not just pertain to your creed. It doesn't just pertain to what you believe in your heart. Islam pertains to every single aspect. The Sharia intends to cover all aspects of life. Khairan inshallah. Also, the concept of refuting the falsehood of the people who say that you cannot wipe over the leather socks. It's haram, it's in a bid'ah, so on and so forth. Now, the next issue is socks which are not leather, such as the socks that most people wear today, whether it's silk socks, cotton socks, 100% cotton, poly cotton, wool socks. You have some nice wool argyle socks, thin business socks. Synthetic socks. You may have some acrylic socks, some synthetic type of, waterproof socks, things like this. What's the ruling on wiping over these things as well? As we have explained in other classes and other lectures, the correct view is that it is permissible to wipe over these things, and it's not haram. And if they themselves are not considered khuffain, then they directly take the ruling of being the khuffain. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. Also, the concept of the time limit that you have to wipe over the khuffain. Also, the condition of placing the khuffain on in a pure state. Also, the type of hadith, ritual impurity that you can and cannot have with regards to wiping over the khuffain. We've explained all of that with some type of detail in other classes and videos. Khair, inshallah, all of these things pertain to this chapter heading. But the first thing that we're getting to right now is, before we get into those other masail, is the permissibility, the legality of doing it. Khairan, inshallah. You go when you travel, you find many, if not most Muslims today, they don't wipe over their socks. Whether you go to Yemen and it's cold outside, I've seen people make wudu outside in the cold and take off their socks. Or in Manhattan, in New York City, dead smack in the middle of New York City, you'll see 99% of the Muslims go to the wudu station, go to the bathroom, and they'll take off their socks and wash their feet. Or rather, many masjids in Manhattan, they have a wet rubber floor, soaking wet. And it makes it so inconvenient for you to even try to wipe over your socks for the purpose of convenience, ease, and implementing the sunnah. Very unfortunate, extremely narrow-minded Muslims today. Rather, in Yemen, when I was there, obviously we know there are reasons why they don't wipe over their leather socks, the people there, or cotton socks, whatever type of socks that you have. When you go into the masjid, there would be literally the place that you take off your shoes, walking towards the sink to make wudu. There would literally be a ditch, let's say maybe 2 feet deep, and let's say maybe one ditch was maybe like 3 feet deep, and let's say maybe Allah alam how many feet in width, but considerable, in which you're forced to take off your socks. So if you say, I want to wipe over my socks, I don't care, you can't. Unless you either walk through the ditch, and the ditch is full of water now. Literally, it's like a pool, a baby pool. Your feet get soaking wet. Or you can try to bravely jump, and that's why we said the width, you're talking about maybe a good amount of feet. A good maybe, let's say maybe 4 to 5 feet. Between you and the other side. And it's wet and slippery stone. Even if you're athletic enough to jump that distance, it's dangerous. Basically telling you, take off your socks. We don't care what your madhab is, whether you're Zaydi or not. You're going to take off your socks in this masjid. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It's not an exaggeration. Anyone who's been to Yemen and been to those different masjids, they can attest to what we're saying. Why don't the Muslims wipe over their socks? The Muslims that aren't from Yemen, that don't have different Shia backgrounds. Zaydi, obviously, we know is an offshoot and a subgenre of the Shia in Yemen, in the north of Yemen. But the other Muslims from Bangladesh, from India, from Pakistan, the Muslims from different countries that you go to, West Africa, Gambia, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, the Muslims that come from Egypt and Tunis and Morocco, why don't they wipe over their socks in Manhattan? And they're all cab drivers. You go to the masjid is packed. Brothers who are cab drivers, brothers who are businessmen, brothers who are merchants, whatever the case may be, brothers who work on a food car, a food truck, and they're all wearing socks with shoes, with sneakers. They have to get back to work. They have their cars parked in the meters. They have to look for a parking spot. It only makes sense to wipe over the sock. Time, ease, and convenience. Yet and still they take off their socks. Why is this? Are they following the ulama from their country? The Muslims from Pakistan and Bangladesh, are they following the Hanafi madhab? The Muslims from Egypt, are they following the Shafi'i madhab? The Muslims from North Africa, are they following the Maliki madhab? the Muslims from West Africa, and the list goes on. Is that the case? The Muslims that come from the Gulf, Kuwait and Saudi, the Muslims come from Palestine, are they following the Hanbali madhab? What are they actually following? And if they are trying to follow something there, that madhab, what about the other aspects of the madhab that they don't follow, such as having a beard or wearing tight pants? And the list goes on. So it's a big problem. And I will humbly say a major manifestation of many of the cracks and the foundation and the body of the practice of Islam among many Muslims in the United States that have migrated from other countries. Is it a technical issue in which they have some type of ilm and fiqh? We don't believe it's permissible to wipe over a jawrabain. You can't wipe over a sock. It's not a khuffain, and so on and so forth. It's not samik. It's not this. It's not that. The people who come into the masjid with shorts on and their knees out. You go into the wudu station and the guy makes wudu. He sits down. His whole thigh is out. Muslims who pray, like I said, with tight pants on, a suit and a tie, and the pants are snug. He makes sujood and ruku' and you're offended. Are they really following something? Muslims who shave. Most of the Muslim men today in the world today, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, let alone in America, but even in the Middle East, they want to look like women and boys. They shave their faces. It's just not haram. It's just sunnah to have a beard. It's not wajib. But it's wajib to take off the socks and wipe and wash the feet. This is one of the major problems in the practice of Islam today, specifically talking about our country, America. May Allah help the Muslims with the proper fiqh and the proper knowledge. And the interesting thing is, when you read and study the different madhabs, and actually find out what the madhab says, you find what they're doing is like night and day. And it's very unfortunate, the lack of common sense and basic simple knowledge among the average Muslim, that you're living in America, you're doing 50 other things that you're not supposed to be doing, you're doing 50 different things that the madhab does not tell you to do, and alhamdulillah, they come to make salat. It only makes sense to wipe over your socks. You're not in a desert. You're not in your country. You're not in some weird place. You're in Manhattan, New York City. It's cleaner. It's more hygienic. It's faster. It's easier to pray with your socks on. And one can't just say, well, akhi, maybe they didn't make wudu on their feet. Give them a break. Give them a husn al-dhan. You go any time of the day. You go for Maghrib. You go for Isha. You go for make janazah. You go to do tarawih. Any time of the day or the night, it's the same case. They take off their socks and they wash their feet. And the wudu stations are dripping wet. Oftentimes, it's very appalling. Moving forward, you go to other masjids of different cultures. Let's say, for example, our brothers and sisters from Somalia. When I was in Minnesota all of those times, or in Seattle, or in Canada, but specifically Minnesota, you'll find, once more, just like the brothers in Manhattan, they force you to follow their way. They force you, okay? And you go into the bathroom, and obviously we know in the Somali culture, the major sin is to wear shoes in any building. The moment you step into the building, you have to take off your shoes instantly. Only Allah knows the experiences that I had in Minnesota, times in which people will literally stare at you. They'll literally say something to you. They almost fight you and beat you up if you step an inch over the big wooden log in the beginning of the masjid. Take off your shoes right now. Haram. So it's unfortunate. So you go to the wudu station or the bathroom, and obviously the whole entire thing, no shoes on. They have little tiny small flip-flops with the little thongs for the toes that you can barely put your foot in if you're wearing socks. Let alone the fact that the entire floor is soaking wet. It's like a pool of water on the tile and on the rubber mat. I.e., you are the minority with wearing socks and wiping over the socks. We're taking off our socks. Why? Because they're Shafi'i. That's what Imam Shafi'i said. That's what the Shafi'i madhab said. Or is it another reason? So the point we're trying to get to is another manifestation of the huge melting pot intellectually, the intellectual melting pot, the melting pot of fiqh. We have Shafi'i madhab, We have Somali culture in St. Paul, Minnesota, or Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have Bangladeshi culture. We have Indian culture, Pakistani culture, Abu Hanifa, fiqh in the middle of Manhattan. So I want to wear these tight trousers or these loose trousers that are beneath my ankle with a suit jacket, a vest, a suit and tie, and I'm going to take off my socks and wash my feet and walk around with wet feet and then put on my business socks and my expensive shoes. Obviously, it just doesn't mix. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't match. It doesn't add up. Khairan, inshallah. Hadith 155. The author says, Hadith Jarir ibn Abdullah, أنه بال ثم توضأ ومسح على خفيه ثم قام فصلى فصيل فقال رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صنع مثل هذا. The first narration is Hadith 155, reported by Jarir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. One day, Jarir used the bathroom, he urinated, then he made wudu, and he wiped over his khuffain. And then he stood up and he offered the salah. They asked him why. He said, the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam did exactly what I did. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he did exactly what I did. This hadith shows us implementing the sunnah and teaching the sunnah through statement and through action. Highlighting point, obviously, is that when he used the bathroom, he broke his wudu, then he wiped over his khuffain, and the people, as if they found it problematic, he explained that Muhammad did what I did, so don't, blow a gasket, don't get too upset, because that's the sunnah. That's the highlighting point from the hadith. The hadith shows us and teaches us that everything from the sunnah wasn't known to every single person. Everything wasn't known. It wasn't always known and agreed upon and well known. Now stop and pay close attention to this hadith, brothers and sisters. This is Jarir, a Sahabi, Jalil. He was asked about something in the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. So if something was hidden or unknown or problematic during his time, what do you think about later on? So the people today, many of them, they try to make every single issue to be well known. It's agreed upon. No one is ever ignorant of this issue. What's the purpose of talking about it and teaching it? It's well known. What about wiping over the khuffain? And it also goes to show, once more, as we've said before, is that every single person from the Tabi'een and from the Sahaba was not necessarily a master faqih, was not necessarily someone that was an alim of everything and they knew everything. And everything was not agreed upon in the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. So how can you take an isolated statement and say it's a dalil and it's a hujjah? You cannot necessarily say that or do that. Nor can you necessarily say that the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, from every single aspect, was the fiqh was 101% spread and circulated, and that everyone who came after them was worse and more ignorant and further from the deen, and it was nothing more than a calamity. And at the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een was a total and absolute utopia of fiqh. No, you can't say that. Khairan, inshallah. Hadith 156. Hadith Hudhayfata qala ra'aytuni ana wa nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam natamasha fata subatata qawman خلف حائط فقام كما يقوم أحدكم فبال فانتبذت منه فأشار إلي فجئته فقمت عند عقبه حتى فرغ. Hadith 156 is reported by Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anh. He says, one day it was me and the Prophet walking. We were taking a stroll, natamasha. So all of a sudden he went to he says, Subatat Qawm. It's like a place where people throw things. People get rid of different types of, waste, different types of trash, things like this. A landfill, you would say, okay? Okay. And the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu, he says it was behind a wall. So he stood up. He says, Kama yaqumu ahdukum. Listen carefully. He says, like one of you stand. And then he urinated. So I walked away from him. I left him, and he gave me a signal to come. So I came and I stood behind him until he was finished. I stood behind him until he was finished. Inshallah ta'ala, hopefully we finish explaining this hadith in our next lesson. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.